Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Championship Leadership Podcast. We got Gav Gillibrand from the United Kingdom, across the pond, as we say, I guess. So, appreciate you being here, Gav. Thanks.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine, Nate. Thanks for the invite. Really good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I get into you and what you're up to and your story, I like to ask this question first to kind of kick things off. Championship Leadership's the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you, or what does championship leadership mean to you when you hear that?
Championship leadership. The first thing that comes to my mind is the Chicago Bulls back in the 90s.
Really?
I literally never heard that question before. Just came straight into my head. All I think is, the heyday of Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan. I can't remember the coach at the time, but there's a good guy who wrote, but there's a guy that wrote the book, and he talks about leaders, and I can't think now. I should have done my homework, but I couldn't have done my homework because I didn't know the question. Yeah. But leadership, I mean, it's a broad topic, isn't it? I mean, where do we go with it? Where do you want to start on that? But yeah, it's such a wide topic. What does it mean to you, Nate?
What does championship leadership mean to me?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Championship leadership to me is first and foremost, right, leading yourself. I think there's a lot of people out there that would love to lead and want to be leaders, and don't necessarily walk the talk. And so you got to lead yourself powerfully first before you can go out and lead others. And I think another big piece to championship leadership is really the ability to be able to pull more out of others than they would out of themselves, right? Really maximizing everybody's performance as a leader as a whole. And of course, everybody's different on a team, organization, company, whatever it is. And it's that ability to know your people at such a high level to know, because you can't lead everybody the same. So the only way you can lead them the way that suits them the best would be to actually really give a shit about your people and get to know them, and in turn be able to, give them the style of leadership that will get the most maximum performance from them. So
I guess it's also leading by example as well, isn't it? Because I get a lot of people try and tell people do this, do that, and try and lead them. But if you just tell someone and then hang on, you're not actually doing what you're asking us to do in the first place. You've got to, I guess that would be my example of it. You've got to walk the walk as well as talk the talk, right?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I think, there's so many different ways. I think it's all of the above. Really, it is. It's kind of cool. I just came back from Alaska. I was in Alaska, and I had 5 of my clients, who are also good friends of mine, came to support me. I was doing this 135-mile run in Alaska, and so they came out, and they were like my crew, right? Because you had to have your own support vehicle and support team. And so it was awesome for them to come out, because I've been talking to them about some of these things that I do. And it was incredible to have them come and help me through that, and to get to see, me actually in the middle of it, right? Like really, truly.
So is that like an ice run? Must be snow up there?
It was, well, there's still some snow on the mountains. And depending on, and some of the mountains that were really high and a bit further away, were almost all covered in snow, but most of it, so it was still melting off the mountains, but most of it had melted, so this is kind of their prime part of the year, where it's 70s or 60s, 70s, fishing season kind of prime, green grass. So I was amazing, like trip of the lifetime for sure. It was incredibly, just the land out there and the landscape. It was just gorgeous, just incredible.
Was that an ultra then, Nate?
It was an ultra, yeah, 135. We actually, we didn't make it 135. I had some significant issues with my feet, but we did make 100. we called it a day after that, just because I knew we were going to run out of time. We weren't going to be able to finish the entire thing. So we made it 100 and called it a day. So
how long did the 100 take you?
This time around, it took about 36 hours.
Was Goggins there? Were you
No,
running
he wasn't
alongside
at this
Goggins?
one.
Does he? I know he's still doing bits and bobs, isn't he?
He is, yeah. I've seen him at one other run. It was at a marathon actually in Las Vegas a year or two ago. I passed him, or we crossed paths.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he wasn't at this one.
He's a crazy character, isn't he?
He is a crazy character. Yeah. Yeah. Very easy. He's on one extreme end of the spectrum, right?
He is like the extreme. I mean, I first heard about Goggins from Joe Rogan about 4 or 5 years ago. I thought, who's this crazy guy? I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan. Then read the books or the podcast. I don't know if you've listened to the Audible version of his book.
Oh yeah, I've listened to it probably 4 or 5 times.
What was so good about that was it wasn't just the book that was being narrated where they stopped it and did the podcasts between each chapter. It was just a really I'd never heard a book like that. That's a great thing. But yeah, he's a special character, but obviously he went through a lot to get to be like that. And I think you've got to be crazy to run 100 miles anyway, Nate. I think you're up there. Like, I mean, I'll be honest, the furthest I've run is 10 kilometers, 10K, which is about 7 miles.
Yeah.
So the thought, my ego is saying, do a marathon once.
Yeah.
It's 26.1, isn't it?
Yeah.
But actually the physical reality of me doing that, my knees just wouldn't be able to take it. But the thought of actually running, for what's a basic sort of time is people want to go below 4 hours, don't they?
Yeah.
If you get into the 3 hours, you're getting reasonably good. Obviously 2 is elite. But what would you run a marathon in, Nate? What's your time for a marathon?
I've only done a marathon one time in Vegas that time, and I think it was like 4:40 or something like that. So it was like 11-minute miles, something like that. With the ultras, I don't train.
Like doing 4 marathons.
Yeah, I don't train. I don't train for speed necessarily.
No.
I'm in it for the long haul, so keep moving. Yeah.
Anyway, well, good work, mate.
Yeah,
good work.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, well, tell us a little bit about you. What you have the GHG Method. I know you have a book. You focus on helping your clients with weight loss, and so yeah, tell us a little bit about your story and how you've kind of gotten to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'll go all the way back, and I actually had a bit of a brief interim. I say a brief interim. I had a 17-year break to do something entirely different. I don't know if you know about that, but I'll tell you.
Oh yeah.
So going back to when I was 14 or 15, always into health, fitness, played every sport, a couple of really good, I like high county sort of sub-national level, but that wasn't really my focus. I just discovered bodybuilding in the late 80s. This is 87, 88, 89. I was at school, and I don't know what they do in America, but we have this thing called work experience, where for a couple of days or even a week, you go into like a potential employer's place, like a bank or an insurance company or something, and everyone went the traditional route, and I went into a gym, and I'd seen Madonna running around Hyde Park, famously with 2 big burly bouncers. Yeah, this is a true story. With personal trainer written across the back of their t-shirt, and I remember
seriously?
I remember thinking, is that a thing? Like, could you be can you be a personal trainer? Like, imagine. And I was really into Madonna. I was like, could I be a personal trainer to the celebrities? Looked in it and realized it was a thing. I didn't know that you could be a personal trainer, but all I knew is I loved the gym, I loved working out, I loved all sports, and if I thought if I could make a living doing something that I find, it was a hobby to me, I thought that would be a great way of doing it. So I went into this gym, and I remember seeing this guy. I would have been like 15 or 16. This guy in his early 20s. Bear in mind, this is the late 80s. He had a ponytail and he was wearing a leotard, and he was doing a step aerobics class. And he had about 30 women eating out of the palm of his hand. I remember thinking, that's what I want to do. Not necessarily with the ponytail and the leotard, but I wanted to, do an exercise class like that. So that was always my view. And then just about to go to university to do sport. I'd signed up to do sports science degree, 3-year degree. and I'd spotted. I'd working part-time in a gym for a year before going to university, and in the staff room one day there was a pin up an advert on the wall, and it was the audition for this TV show. This is 1993 now, called Blind Date. Now, Blind Date back in the late 80s, early 90s was the #1 TV show in the UK. And bearing in mind, we only had 4 channels back then: BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and Channel 4. Long story short, I went on this TV show and went for the auditions. I thought, how can I bullshit my way on? How can I make sure I get on this show? So I went to the first audition and told them I was a stripper. This is a true story. Age 18, 19, which was only half a lie. And I'll back up. About 6 weeks before this first audition, I'd actually seen in the newspaper auditions for strippers, strippergrams. You guys call it for bachelorette party, like a guy that rocks up to a party or a restaurant for 10 minutes, dressed as a fireman or a policeman, dances around, gets a load of cash, walks out the door. So I'd been for the audition, but hadn't actually done my first gig. This is a true story. Okay. So I went to the auditions, thought, I could tell a small white lie here, but I didn't feel too bad because there was some semi-truth in it. And they said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a part-time personal trainer, which was true. But I'm a strippergram at the weekends. And they were like, eyes lit up. Long story short, I breezed through these 3 auditions, went on the show, got picked to go on this date. Literally a couple of months after the show was out, I went to university. But all through university, I kept doing this part-time stripping at the weekends, which was great fun. Yeah. Never knew where it was going to take me. So I'd done 3 years of just a very part-time thing. And then again, true story, 2 weeks before my graduation, and I was about to hand in a 10,000-word dissertation. Well, I say about to hand it in, I needed to start it and finish it in 2 weeks. And a friend of mine who had been, in the meantime, from the same hometown as we, had been working with the UK's equivalent to the Chippendales. Remember the Chippendales in the 80s and the 90s? Called the Dream Boys. He'd been working with this group, and he called me up and said, Gav, we've got 1 space available. We've got a 12-week tour of Europe. I need to know. I'm like, mate, I've got my dissertation to hand in, start and finish in 2 weeks. I said, he said, when do you need to know by? He said, today. I said, fuck it, I'm in. And I just dropped my degree. And that was the start of a full-time career in stripping or dancing or entertainment. 3 years sort of part-time, and then from 1996 to 2010, this was a full-time gig for me.
Hey.
And look, it was, you can imagine, you're in your mid-20s, we were dancing and working all over Europe. My job consisted of going to the gym, going to the gym again, going on the sunbed, taking care of myself and dancing and doing shows all over Europe. It was like, I got to age 30, I thought, you know what, I can't do this. I can't carry on like this. I need to start using my brain, sort of using that, I'm going to quit age 30. Age 35, still hadn't quit. Found it really hard to quit. Age 35, 2008, I moved to London with a view to getting back into what I'm doing now, which was personal training, coaching, fitness, nutrition. For another 2 years, I still kept doing it part-time at the weekends. I just couldn't. 2010, I hang up the string, the baby oil, the costumes were gone for good. And so 2010 to 2021, 11 years full-time doing what I should have been doing back in 1996. So there's a long-winded way of answering your question there, Nate.
Got it. So where did I love it. So Magic Mike, like, you lived it.
Now, Magic Mike, when that film came out, because you would always try and explain to the guys and maybe girls, what was the industry like? Yeah. And I'm not saying it was exactly like that, but that was the closest thing. Was it close? When all the guys, when we saw that, were like, have you seen Magic Mike? I said, like, that was really like some of the nights. There was a guy sort of like the ringmaster, the Matthew McConaughey. Yeah. And there was the other guys, the troops, backstage, getting ready, pumping up. It was like that, we did some massive shows, like not just the 300-400 girls, small shows, sometimes 100 girls, but sometimes 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 in stadiums. So it was like being famous, but not being famous. Yeah.
Yeah.
which means you could get away with everything. Bear in mind, this was the 90s and early 2000s,
Right.
before social media, which was,
Yeah.
you know, it was
Yeah.
a lot of fun back then,
Yeah,
as you can imagine.
absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine. Only imagine. That's great. What so yeah, well, so you're able to finally get yourself out of that industry, which I could imagine would be hard to
Very
do.
hard.
And you start full steam ahead with what you're doing now. But like, how much time did that really take to get it to where you are today?
Well, the story was 2008 until 2000, and it was actually 10 years to the day, 2018. I went to London June 2008, and I left the city of London 2018. So that was 10 years of what I would call one-to-one personal training. So I was in a commercial gym for a couple of years. Then I went to like a private studio, and most of my clients were bankers, lawyers, hedge fund guys. And I was in the equivalent to London, to New York's Wall Street. That fast-paced, you know, hectic financial, a lot of money, a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, you know, them, not us. But it was that very fast, you know, paced arena. Brilliant. So 2008, 2018, doing one-to-one. And then I started looking at online as an option. This is way before, obviously, last year.
Yeah.
So I left 10 years to the day the city to take my one-to-one personal training business and became what I would now doing an online coach, but left the city from going from 30 to 40 hours a week working with clients to nothing, starting from scratch. But I knew that what I loved about the gym was actually going to limit me. There's only so many hours in the day, and I was already charging more than most. So there's only two ways to make more money: either do more hours or charge more. And I couldn't really charge much more, couldn't really do more hours. So
Yeah.
I thought I need a system that's going to allow me to work with clients anywhere in the world. And I've currently got clients in 4 or 5 countries of the world at the moment. But potentially make a lot more money and cut back on the hours. And that's what the online coaching allowed me to do. So June 2018, well, we're in June now. So it's about 3 years doing exactly what I'm doing now, which is the online coaching as opposed to one-to-one personal training.
Okay. And so what's the GHG method? What does that stand for?
Well, I'm glad you've asked, Nate. GHG method. Well, I tell you what, the GHG is my initials.
Your initials.
So Gav Gillibrand. The Howard is my middle name, but don't tell anyone. I'm sure no one will be listening to this. But if they do, it's Howard. Don't. And that was the book, which is really, I was very pleased. I published this in March 2019. But what's interesting is it was the biggest achievement of my life. It's 48,000 words, so way more than my 10,000 word dissertation that I never did.
Yeah.
But I look back on it now and I'm like, I've changed so much. So it's funny what happens in the 2 years. That was the biggest thing I'd achieved. And even now I'm like, you know what, if I could write another one, and I'm in the middle. This is really what I do with my coaching with my clients. So this is like because you know, information's one thing, but information's worth shit. It doesn't mean anything, does it? Like without implementation or showing actually how to use that information. And that's what the coaching is. So I just teach what I put in that book, and that's specifically around health, fitness, and with a particular slant towards helping clients lose weight.
Yeah. Got it. That's great. Who are some championship leaders, coaches, mentors that have impacted your life along your path here, your journey in life, and more so than who? Like, you know, what is it? What are some of the characteristics that really stood out to you from some of these people?
Cool. Well, I'll talk about some coaches, or I would say they were mentors because they haven't actually been coached. I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins. I know some people love him, some people hate him.
Yeah.
But he had a massive impact on me. I saw him early 2000, 2003, 2004. He came to London and I did the fire walk. I don't know if you've done any of his events, the UPW. Did the 4-day event, the fire walk. And I remember seeing this big giant of a guy who, you know, and that was my first experience of what we would call personal development, working on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and I read a couple of his books, Awaken the Giant Within. And I've been all over the world following different people. I've seen Brendan Burchard, I've seen Robin Sharma, you know, so there's been a lot of the so-called famous gurus or mentors. I've never actually personally worked with them, but I've bought into a lot of their
Yeah.
books and philosophies. And really about 7 years ago, when Robin Sharma sort of, made the 5 a.m. club become quite popular.
Yeah.
That whole philosophy of getting up early and working on yourself. And I took to that with, I remember him saying, look, people that do really well get up early, they read, they work out, they write in a journal. Now, I didn't know whether that was true or not, but he said it and I believed him. So I did it for about 5 years straight. And you know what? It's not to say you have to get up at 5 a.m., but
Right.
100% right is the people that are successful in any walk of life work on themselves.
Yeah.
And his philosophy was, if you can work on yourself harder than you do on your job. I've got to mention Jim Rohn as well, who's another classic guy from the 80s and 90s. So there's some of the bigger guys, but in terms of actual coaching myself, I've had a lot of really great coaches in the last 5 years. I paid a lot of money, and I'm a big believer in the philosophy of, if you're going to be a coach, you have to have bought into coaching yourself.
Yeah.
How can you expect people to buy your maybe high ticket coaching if you've never been coached yourself? And coaching, as you know, Nate, can accelerate your results tenfold. Like, why struggle and bash your head against a brick wall when some coach can come in and literally change what you're doing within the space of weeks that might possibly take you decades to learn yourself? You can just do a couple of strengths. I've had some great coaches. There's a guy called Tim Drummond who actually helped me move my business from one-to-one personal training into online coaching I'm doing now. Shay Rowbottom, we talked about briefly off air, the brilliant video marketing coach on LinkedIn. I work with Craig Ballantyne, who's a brilliant fitness coach. Have you heard of Craig? Nate, you're smart.
Craig, yeah.
I worked personally with Craig. Did his perfect day formula retreat. That was excellent. There's so many. I've got a list of them so long, but I'm a massive fan of coaching. I like investing. I like spending money on other people if I can get a great return myself.
Yeah. That's interesting. You say the Firewalk with Tony Robbins. I have yet to go to one of his events, but I have some friends that worked with him for years. Joe Williams was his senior trainer for years and years. And
cool.
Dave Albin was the head guy that ran all of his Firewalks for him for years as well. And I have an event called ULW Unleash the Leader Within, which I guess is kind of a little bit of a
similar, yeah.
But Dave Albin, who now works, he just does Firewalks and glass walks and things across the world. He does a Firewalk for us for our event. So anyway,
cool.
Yeah, very cool.
It's just a great metaphor for life. I mean,
it's a powerful experience.
People say that the coals aren't as hot, and the truth is they probably aren't. But people that do it don't believe that they're genuinely walking through, and the fact that Tony can whip them up into almost like a frenzy. And it's just, as he says, it's a metaphor for life. If you can convince yourself that you're walking across fire, it's just to say, look, you've got more potential. There's no limit, that glass ceiling. If you can actually physically do it, you get to the end and everyone's cheering. It's like, if you can do that, you can put your mind to anything. But I'm a big fan of Tony.
Well, if you're skeptical of the Firewalk, get halfway and stop and see how skeptical you are.
Oh yeah,
it's real
hot. It's real coals. It's real coals.
Yeah.
I remember the very first. I've done it 3 times now, actually, his event. But I remember I'll be honest, my mum and my sister were very skeptical back in 2014. And what you've got to realize, 20 odd years ago, when you mention the word personal development or self-development, it's more of a US term. When you say that to most English people, they're like, oh, personal development is a bit wanky. We call it that. It's, you guys are so much further ahead when it comes to that. So when I said I'm going to do this Firewalk, and they said, well, how much are you going to spend on that? They were like, 4 days with Tony Robbins. Who the fuck's Tony? I remember saying it was about 500 quid, which is what, about $700, $750. And they were like, you're going to spend that much on walking across coals? They're like, what? Who do you think you are? Like, they're not real. They're very typical sort of doubters. And I did it, and I'm a big fan of it, and I would tell anyone to go and do it. Tony's a force to be reckoned with. He's getting older now, isn't he? He's 60 odd, but he's still touring. Yeah,
he's still touring, but that's why You know, I've heard he's looking to, you know, ease back. I mean, he's been going hard for over 20 years, right? Like just running events and doing everything else. But yeah, he's kind of one of the OGs, right? He's on.
He is definitely
Rushmore when it comes to personal development, for sure. So, what's you know, I think of championship leadership. A big part of that is championship leaders have this incredible vision, and you know, it's oftentimes they can see things that others aren't able to see, and not just to have this vision that others can't see, but they have this belief in it to the point where they have tremendous courage to take action on it too. So I'd love to hear, you know, what's the vision for you for the GHG method and what you're doing and what you're up to and the impact that you want to make, let's say even short term, maybe next 5 years.
Well, first thing I can think of in terms of the GHG method, I need to finish the second book that I'm struggling with.
What's it going to be called?
No idea. And I don't even know what I'm writing. I'm just writing. And here's the funny thing.
You enjoy writing?
I love it. I love it. Once I published that, because it was such a big achievement for me, I thought I'd crack the code to writing books. I thought I'd be churning them out year after year, one a year. I remember thinking in 10 years I'll have 10 books. It's a lot harder. I don't know if you've ever written a book, Nate. It's hard to actually get it down. And I realized writing that, I didn't realize how much of a perfectionist I was. When it's your own work, everything has to be perfect. So going a bit off topic there, one, I want to get finished that. Two, I want to take my current business and just do more of what I'm doing. I've worked with online close to 200 clients in the last 2.5 years now, 3 years.
Yeah.
I would like to take this to a 7-figure business. I'm nowhere near there yet. So that's going to help a lot more people. Obviously, it can be great for me financially. Second book, I actually can genuinely put my hand on my heart and say I'm doing exactly what I want to do right now. I'm in my home office, you know, my wife's outside, the kids are in the sun at the moment. You know, maybe I'd like to be in a bit better weather all the time, but overall, I get to work when I want to work within reason, as in I'm in my home office. I can schedule my own hours. I can really, really help a lot of people. A lot of people that come to me are really struggling with their health. And when you can help them lose 30, 40, 50 pounds, some of my clients in the moment are losing that, and change their life and change their health. And when they turn around to me after 6-9 months of work with me and say, you know what, my life has changed beyond belief, that's a great feeling. And to be paid well to help clients do that, then I think you're onto a winner. If you can enjoy what you do, you help others, and it's financially viable, then you've kind of ticked all the boxes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And, you know, it's especially, like you said, personal development's lag behind maybe in the UK, but it definitely feels like we're sometimes overwhelmed with personal development, but I suppose that's kind of the circles you follow in social media makes it feel that way too.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a lot of people out there trying to make it happen and for themselves, especially online, and the fact that you're doing it and doing it at a high level and continuing to grow, like, man, it's not easy. And so it's big. It's a big accomplishment for you to be able to go out and do that, and the impact that you're able to make, which obviously is, I'm sure, most important to you.
Yeah. Well, I think you mentioned the personal development there and self-development. I think from my experience, and certainly in the last 10 years, which is when I took self-development really serious, you know, I think a lot of people are working on shelf development. And what I mean by that is they keep buying all the books and putting them on the damn shelf. Now, here's the thing. I don't actually buy that many books now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I know enough, but if I took action on everything that I've read and actually taken in, then I'd be doing even better. So my message is, read a load of books, learn as much as you can, but enough is enough. Sometimes you've got to say, you know what, I've got to start taking action, because I've been to seminars and spent thousands, and I've got this workbook and folder, and I've looked at it once and it's gone on the shelf. Yeah. And have I actioned any of that stuff? No. If you take 2 or 3 simple actions from every speaker and then put them into place and, go hard in on everything they've said, you can massively move yourself and everyone around you and your business forward. So, you know, my message is stop just learning more, actually take action. So forget that shelf development, stop developing your bookcase and actually take action, pull your finger out and pull the trigger. And I think a lot of people are scared. And I remember my coach, Tim, he said to me, when I was about to leave the city and move the, you know, the one-to-one business to online, and he come up, it was not his phrase, we've heard it from a lot of people. He says, ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
Instead of ready, aim, fire. Most people are getting ready to get ready. If I'd waited until I was ready, I would have, look, it was easy for me to stay in the city doing 30 to 40 clients a week. That was good money. But he said, unless you actually physically leave and tell all those clients you're no longer available for one-to-one personal training, you're never going to be able to do this in the long run. He said to me, can you potentially make 5-10 times more with an online business? And I said, I absolutely can. He said, so you've got to leave and just pull the trigger. He said, ready, fire, aim. So I just fired, aimed, trusted him.
Yeah.
And I've never looked back.
Man, that's incredible. That's got to be it's a really scary thing to do, right? When you're in that moment.
It was scary, yeah. It was scary, but it was also exciting.
Yeah. One of the last questions here real quick. What's a critical moment for you? You know, kind of that fork in the road style moment where you either got to go right or left. And obviously you made the decision that you did that has you where you are today. But, you know, had you made a different decision, you could be in a very different place in life today. I think we have a lot of these moments, right? Turning points, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's also, you know, this last year and a half we've gone through, there's a lot of people that are in these moments and it's, they don't know where to go. A lot of times their gut and intuitions tell them to go one way, but there's a lot of force and pressure on the other side as well, trying to get them to go a different direction. So what would that be for you? Is there a moment or two that comes to mind for you?
Well, think about this. I left the gym, went online June 2018. If I was still in the gym when COVID hit last year, my whole business would have gone. I've got friends, unfortunately, that have lost their gyms, their studios, their personal training business is being decimated. I know just off the top of my head, 3 friends that were doing exactly what I was doing just 2.5, 3 years ago in the city, because the city's dead now. Literally, there's no one in the city. Everyone's working from home. So all the banks, we're talking every major bank and finance industry in the world, they're in London, New York, and maybe a couple of other places. So they are the biggest 2, London, New York, they're the biggest 2, maybe Tokyo. No one's in the city. So all the gyms are empty. Their whole business from having 30 to 40 clients a week has gone to 0. So a couple of the guys have gone back worked on a building site. You know, they've been personal training for years, and they've got family, they've got wife, they've got children. The whole business has been decimated. I've got a friend who's about to get married this weekend coming in Athens that I can't fucking go to because of COVID. Now, he was the owner of 2 really successful gyms in central London called City Athletic, and they're running at a bare minimum because no one's there. He's actually sold his half to his business partner. He's got married in Athens and he's moving back to Australia. And that's another part of COVID. So if I was doing literally what I was doing for 10 years, just a couple of years ago, I'd be in the shit. I literally would not be able to survive because, you know, I thank God or whoever you want to thank, whatever you believe in, it was fortunate. So I got out at the right time. And touch wood, I've got a recession or pandemic proof business because everyone's kind of moved to online. And what happened, a lot of the guys I work with, they just had to scramble. They were like, hang on, we've got all these clients that we can't see. Can we work out some type of online business model? But some of them have made it work, some of them haven't. So there was my fork. I mean, I guess, it wasn't a decision I had to make. I guess I made the decision. It's almost like I could
not knowing.
I had a premonition. I had a premonition. Yeah,
that's incredible, and that's so true. I got some clients that one works in the city, the other, the married couple, Amanda, she hasn't worked in the city since this has all gone on. And he's like, yeah, we went to Times Square. He's like, man, it's empty. He's like, there's all of these restaurants that just like thrive off of the Broadway shows and everything else, and all that's shut down, and it's just all impacted, and hardly anyone's in the city, like you said, like London. And it's crazy that the residual effects that it's having. I didn't even think of like what you just talked about, the trainers.
Yeah, it's the whole business gone. But even on a bigger scale, like the guys that had their own gyms or premises and small business owners, it's just been ruined. And you know, I don't want to go into whether it's obviously been something, but I don't know what the Americans are thinking. It's grossly been over exaggerated to what it was, and I think the fallout is now is way worse than the actual impact of what actually went on. So
100%. Yeah, it's.
I think we've been lied to, definitely. And I don't want to get into I'm definitely not an anti-vax. I'm not anti-COVID. Anyone thinks that, I'm anti-bullshit. And we've been fed a lot of bullshit.
A ton. I agree with that. Well, let's wrap this up. One last question for you. I want to respect your time.
Mate.
You know, if there's one or two things you could give to the listeners that if they were to implement today would help move their life forward today, what would those be?
First thing that comes to my mind is be a continual student of everything, and pick up a book. You know, I try and teach my clients this. A lot of people say, well, I don't have time to read. And we know that's bullshit. We all have time for the things that are important to us. What it is you don't think you're going to get value from that, so you don't bother reading. Because anyone can read 10 pages a day. That would be the one thing is, if you read 10 pages a day, that's 300 pages a month. That's an average book is about 300 pages.
Yeah.
That's a book a month. There's 12 a year. There's 60 books in 5 years. If you read 60 books on one particular subject, you would know more than 95% of the world's population on that subject. That's just in 5 years.
Right.
So I would just say, read a book, get a coach, and accelerate your results tenfold. Don't look at the money that you're spending. Look at the return on investment, the ROI, because that 5K is going to be worth 100 times more than that over the next 10 years if you use it wisely. Yeah, absolutely. That's powerful stuff, and it's easy, right? Sometimes it's so easy that people they don't do it. But if you're listening, obviously you are. Please take this advice and go put it into action. Very simple. I appreciate your time today, Gav. What's some ways we can follow you, get a hold of your book? And absolutely, yeah. The best place is two main platforms. My website, gavgillibrand.com, or just come and find me on LinkedIn. There's only one of me, Gav Gillibrand. That's my biggest platform. All my daily posts, videos. I think I'm connected with about 35,000 on there. It's a big platform for me. Yeah. And if you're not on LinkedIn and you're in business, you need to get on LinkedIn because it's the place to be. So LinkedIn, I'm going to be on. That is the place to find me. Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. We'll get that linked up for you as well. Appreciate you showing up today and had a
pleasure.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Nate.